Good afternoon, Minu. Do you see me? Okay. It is very nice to meet you online. I think your time is approaching midnight. Is it right? Okay. Thank you so much.
Very close.
Very close. Yes. Thank you very much for taking your precious time for our innovation forum. And I am Lee-kyung Kim, professor at Jungang University. And I'm going to serve as the chairwoman for our session. And first of all, may I introduce you to our Korean audience?
Please, thank you.
Okay. Dr. Minu Aip is the managing director and the vice chair of the University Design Institute at Arizona State University. At University Design Institute, Minu brings her expertise to enable universities to be more relevant, successful, and sustainable. Minu has worked with 66 universities in 20 countries around the world to advance innovative designs. As an advisor to the president at Arizona State University, Minu leads large-scale design initiatives that strengthen ASU's capacity for innovation and long-term impact. Minu, you are so great, so I have more to say. You are currently also a faculty member at the WP Carey School of Business. I hope I introduced you correctly. Thank you. So today, you are going to reveal the secret, how Arizona State University became #1 innovation university in the US. However, this is not a secret anymore because your university is very, very famous around the world as well as in Korea. However, what a great honor that we have a chance to directly listen from you about this innovation. So Minu, would you like to talk about your case, 45 to 50 minutes? Then I'm going to ask you questions, and as well as we have audience who are participating in this session online. Also, some of them are watching our live streaming through YouTube. So please go ahead and then give us your talk. Okay.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kim. Yes. I'm able to unmute now. Well, Dr. Kim, thank you for that kind introduction and the welcome and the setup. I am delighted to be here to represent Arizona State University in this conversation with you all about the future of higher education and the role of innovation. And we appreciate the platform that you have given us to share our journey and our story. And I look forward to a conversation with you, Dr. Kim, and with members of the audience when we are done. What I'd like to do in the time that we have together is to share 6 aspects of ASU's design that allowed us to reach this place of innovation that you've all heard about us and has given us some prominence as we look around the world. I want to also share with you some of the questions that continue to challenge and inspire our leaders as we look into the future. So yes, we've had the privilege and the recognition to be #1 in innovation in the US, but we are by no means resting on our laurels. We are thinking and working hard every day to continue to think about how we can be relevant as we move into the future at Arizona State University. So our journey began a long time ago in 1886, actually, when we began as a Tempe normal school, a school to train teachers. And it was only in 1958 that we became a university. So we have deep roots in the state of Arizona. But the journey that I'm going to be sharing with you today really looks back at the last 19 years. That was sort of a different phase of ASU's evolution. And this phase of ASU's evolution began with some key questions. The questions are, as a public institution, what do we want to contribute to society? How do we want to create impact? And then who do we want to become in the process? And so these are sort of the defining questions that have really motivated us to explore and experiment and innovate on this journey that we've been on for the last 19 years. So the way we answer the what question is through our charter. And we define our charter as our commitment to the state of Arizona, to the people of Arizona, and then broadly to the communities we serve. And in this charter, we are declaring what it is that we want to do as an institution. And so we say in our charter that we want to be measured not by whom we exclude, but by whom we include and how they succeed. So that first part of the charter is talking about our role as creating space and creating inclusion for students. So creating as much room and opportunity to include students in the educational experience and also to set them up for success. The second part of our charter talks about advancing research and discovery of public value. We recognize and respect the importance of basic research, and we think that interdisciplinary research and research that really looks at translating ideas into practice that actually helps problem solve in the real world is important. And then finally, we talk about assuming fundamental responsibility for the economic, social, cultural, and overall health of the communities we serve. And that is our statement that says we do not want to be removed from society. We want to be integrated deeply into the communities. So there is a partnership, there is a relationship of give and take between the university and the communities with which we engage. So our charter then represents the what question of what is it that we want to contribute to society. Then there is a question of how are we going to do it? We have set out very high aspirations for ourselves. How are we going to guide our thinking and decision-making as we set out to achieve the ideals of our charter? So we have the guidelines of design aspirations, and these 8 design aspirations are really what allow us to evaluate our decision-making, evaluate our problem-solving, evaluate our capacity to innovate. These provide sort of the guardrails as we think about it. I don't want to go through each of them, but this is just to share with you that there is the charter, and then there are these design aspirations that together give us that framework and that foundation from which we innovate and from which we make changes as we move forward, and as we have done over the last 19 years. So just by looking at our charter, you recognize that it really demands growth, and it demands that we have a different kind of culture from what one would imagine a traditional university would have. So the question is, how do you grow and how do you create that culture change? And I'd like to start that conversation with the idea that there are 2 significant shifts within our institution that allowed us to be on this trajectory of growth and culture change. So the first is a shift in the design logic, and I'll explain that in just a second. And the second is a shift in mindset from what should be to what could be, a mindset of growth, a mindset of possibility. So what do we mean by an enterprise logic or the shift in design logic? So when we look at traditionally what universities have been, they're focused on supporting individual students and, and the enlightenment and the shaping of their lives and their trajectories. It was about immersive instruction where the students came to the university, taught by faculty members. And then really the focus was on the student and equipping that student for the most part to be successful in acquiring a job or going on to be productive members of society. When we look at the enterprise model that we subscribe to now, we are in that space of recognizing that the purpose of an institution of higher education is not just the enlightenment of individual students, but it is really to contribute to social transformation and economic success. So right there, we're talking about a different way of thinking about the role and impact of a university in society. That we think that immersive instruction is one aspect of what we can do, But ultimately, our goal, if we are focusing on social transformation and economic success, is to really think about educating at scale. Because immersive instruction, by definition, limits those that we can serve and invite into the educational experience. Part of our charter talked about taking responsibility for our communities and doing research of public value. And that demands that our faculty are not just traditional faculty, but they function as knowledge entrepreneurs, that they're creating knowledge that makes its way outside into society and has impact. They're also knowledge entrepreneurs inside in terms of designing new ways of teaching, designing new ways of learning. And that really the organizational scale, the impact that we want to have moved from the historic model of impacting individuals, so small groups of students, to now saying that the scale could be global. It is definitely within the state of Arizona, it is nationally, and then it is globally. So that's what we mean by that shift in logic. And so we've moved away from the academy logic that has governed higher education for a very long time, and moving in the direction of the enterprise way of thinking. The second piece there then that supports that enterprise way of thinking is really that mindset shift. So we have a very clear sense of purpose. Our charter and our design aspirations are the North Star. We know why we exist and what we are trying to accomplish. And then we have a culture. So the ASU Innovation Mindset is really the way we go about accomplishing the mission and the purpose of the institution. We've adopted a very deliberate approach to design. We're very intentional in the way we design the institution, the way we build our schools and colleges, the way we design our initiatives. And so that deliberate approach to design is a very important aspect of that mindset shift that has gotten us to where we are. We have also been privileged to have Dr. Michael Crow, our president, who has been an incredibly visionary leader, recognized around the world for his vision and his capacity to think about the possibilities of higher education and then the innovation that he's been able to shape here at ASU. So steady visionary leadership has been an incredible asset in our own evolution. We also have a very deep pool of leaders who are aligned with the purpose of the institution, and we invest very intentionally in developing these leaders who are then helping us to move the institution forward from wherever they sit. So this combination of this shift in the design logic of higher education combined with the mindset shift is that foundation that helps us to move forward. So what I want to spend the remainder of my time is really walking you through 6 aspects of our design that has allowed us to achieve some of the outcomes that we have been able to achieve over the last 19 years. It is our way of addressing the growth and culture question. But these 6 aspects are also forcing us to rethink everything we know and take for granted in higher education. They are questioning everything that higher education was about, starting with who do we design the university for and what the role of the student is in that design, thinking about the role of technology, recognizing that universities are actually systems within systems, so how do we engage at the systems level, looking at interdisciplinary collaborations as we try to solve problems of significance in society, recognizing that universities can't really do it all on our own, that we need partners and many kinds of partners to force changes in our thinking to accomplish things at scale that we may not be able to do on our own. And then thinking very practically and pragmatically about acquiring resources to do all of these things. And for a public university, really reimagining how we might acquire the resources to do the things that we want to do. So for each of these areas, I'll share with you some key questions and a couple of examples. I cannot make this exhaustive. There are just too many examples to share. So I'll pick a couple of examples in each of these areas so you can see what exactly we've been doing in each of these areas. So number 1 is designing for student success. And what we mean here is all universities teach students and prepare them for jobs and careers and have classes and curriculum. So what does it mean when we say designing for student success? The key difference here is that we recognize that when we say designing for student success, it means that the question is not about what is convenient for the university, what is easy for us to do, or what the faculty would find convenient, but it is about shifting the focus to what is the right thing for the student, what is the best thing for the student. So what does this actually look like? The questions that drive our thinking here is, what does inclusion mean in higher education? This is a really important question for us because in our charter, we said that we are about who we include and how they succeed. So this has challenged our thinking to say, how do we allow the university to invite in students who historically would have not gone to universities? How do we break those socioeconomic barriers that prevent students from coming to universities? How do we break those cultural barriers for first generation students who come from families that have not gone to college and therefore don't dream of their children being able to go to college, or the students themselves can't see themselves in higher education? So for us, the question of inclusion is very real, and it's something that we think about every day. And then there is, once they come into the institution, what are we doing to prepare them for the future? And this is the question about the 21st century learner. Because universities have been designed for a long time on primarily the same kind of model. And we are saying that we need to rethink that model because the 21st century learner may learn differently, may want to be taught differently, is coming from a place where they engage with technology differently. So how do we design for that new kind of learner? And then the question about designing for access and excellence. Everywhere we go around the world, there is the myth that we buy into that if you have a greater number of students, it means you cannot offer quality education. And we work very hard to bust that myth, to say it is in fact possible to create access to greater populations and offer high quality education. So how do we do that? It's really focusing at the systems level, looking at processes and cultures to really create scale and student success. And this begins even before a student comes into our environment. It's proactive community engagement, being out there with the community, with populations that have been historically underserved, running programs for parents and children. And a good example is the Hispanic Mothers and Daughters program, trying to educate families about what it means to send their children to the institution, helping them understand the financial aspects, the decision-making that goes into coming to a higher education institution, partnering with high schools, partnering with community colleges. So getting ahead of the curve in terms of meeting the students long before they have arrived at the institution. Once they have arrived at the institution, we recognize that supporting success early is important. We recognize that that first year, students are particularly vulnerable. It's a big shift for many of our students. And so there's examples of what we do include on-campus housing for freshmen. So there is a sense of community and belonging and support. There's an ASU 101 course that orients them to being at a university, first-year success coaches, senior students who serve as success coaches for the incoming freshmen. These are some examples of really then supporting them once they come into the institution. And then we recognize that we are about preparing the 21st century learner. So it's creating a rich, immersive learning environment with over 800 degree programs, the use of technology. So there are on-campus courses, there are fully online courses, there are hybrid options. And then during COVID, we launched ASU Sync, where students can attend a class on campus, or they can virtually beam into a class live, so as to not lose the opportunity to learn from the instructor and from their peers. And we recognize that all learning doesn't happen just on campus. So students are surrounded by opportunities to create relationships and create initiatives and create ways of advancing themselves beyond their core curriculum. A good example would be the over 1,000 student clubs and organizations. We are also committed to student success, and so there is a very heavy focus on data-based case management. So we understand the students who are coming in, we understand those who might be at higher risk for to struggle at the university, higher risk around finances, higher risk in terms of dropping out. So there is that focus on collecting data. So together, we have that whole curve of meeting the students before they come in, really paying attention to what it takes to help them be successful when they come in, creating that rich, immersive environment, and then making sure that we are equipped with the right amount of data to support our students and meet them where we need to meet them. So what that means for us is that we have thousands of students, yet the university knows each one. There are over 800 data points that are collected on our students, and there are models that are designed to help us recognize who needs attention, and that information is shared with advisors at various colleges so they can proactively reach out and support students who need the extra help. Preparing the 21st century learner is also about forcing ourselves to rethink what it means to teach in a classroom, what a classroom actually means. And so we have used adaptive learning technologies as one way to answer that question about how we make that change from a mass delivery of education where all students get the same lesson at the same time to a mass personalization model where students can learn at a pace that suits them. There is the opportunity to apply that learning in the classroom with their peers. It's a more engaged, active learning. And we recognize that we have had a significant difference in learning outcomes for our students by deploying these technologies. So what has this focus on access allowed us to accomplish? We've seen a significant capacity increase and growth in our capacity to serve students, a very large growth in students to about 75,000 students on our campuses and over 53,000 students who are online learners. So really moving ourselves in the direction of our mission to provide access to education. But we're also particularly proud of the kind of students that we have been able to provide access to. First generation students, significant growth in enrollment. This is for us bringing in students who would otherwise probably have not gone to university at all, who would never have put themselves on that path to achieve success and potentially move themselves out of their social class into a new social class. And also then our capacity to provide access to students who are low income. So these are just a few snapshots of the outcomes that we have been able to achieve because of that relentless focus on access and because of that relentless focus on saying the university should be designed with the student success in mind primarily. Our second theme then is leveraging technology to drive transformation. There are two questions that we think about all the time. What is the right balance of technology and touch? And thanks to COVID, I think we are all in that space of answering this question. But what ASU has been particularly good at is answering that second question. How can technology help us leap into the future? Anticipating where teaching and learning could go, and then investing in technologies early enough to allow us to move in that direction much more quickly. So what have we done in this space? ASU has Ed+. This is a platform that allows us to engage with companies outside that have tools and products that can accelerate learning. So they have an opportunity to then allow us to experiment with some of those tools and really accelerate our own understanding of how we use technology. It allows us to scale significantly beyond the population that we are able to serve within our state. So Ed+ offers a lot of programs that are not necessarily degree granting, but allows us to serve students, including refugees, in camps in many parts of the world. Housed within Ed+ is ASU Online. This is where we offer over 200 degree programs and and certifications. It really is a single point of contact for the student. They have success coaches to make sure that these students are served just as much as our students are served on campus. We do not distinguish between faculty who teach at ASU online and faculty who teach on campus. It's fundamentally the same faculty who teach. So we don't differentiate between the online degrees and the on-campus degrees. And then to support all of this work, we have the Enterprise Technology Office. They're driving initiatives around smart campus efforts and really using new technologies to propel us forward in terms of teaching, learning, and the student experience. And they provide the backbone for all of our technology-based efforts. So when we talk about technology, we don't just talk about technology in the classroom. We think about how technology around the classroom, across the campus, can shape the student experience. So what you're seeing here is a student studying with Alexa in one of our engineering dorms. These rooms have Alexa, and students can use a voice-based approach to get information about things that are going on campus, as well as to help them study. And these students then have the opportunity to also take engineering courses that allow them to develop new voice-based interface solutions. So they can study with Alexa in their dorm room, and then working on their own or with their friends, they can develop new solutions at the same time. We've also invested heavily in virtual labs. ASU was in fact the first in the United States to have a virtual biology lab, and that really is propelling student learning and experience in a completely different way. We have a mobile app that all of our students, all of our faculty, and all of our staff are on. It's a way for us to create a virtual network across our institution. And during COVID, this became an incredible platform that allowed us to track the health and well-being of our community members. And then, of course, our technology office offers digital backpacks to our students, a suite of tools that allow them to leverage all of the technologies that are available on campus. But technology is not just about saying, how can we do what we do currently incrementally better? But it is about looking far into the future and saying, or asking ourselves the question, how can technology help us get to where we should be? And so this is an example here of a partnership that ASU has with a company called Dreamscape Learn. And what they do is develop virtual reality courses. And our first course is going to be a virtual reality biology course that I believe will be launched in spring next year. Students will learn about biology, learn about life, learn about the planet by being in this virtual environment in an alien zoo. And so where we're going to go with this is to build Dreamscape labs, multiple labs across campus, where students can work with engineering faculty, with art faculty, with design faculty, to really work on solving problems together, and also learning in a completely different way. So really, technology is about enhancing the student experience in the classroom, but recognizing that students can learn in many ways. So how do we use technology to enhance their overall experience at the institution? And then how can we, as the institution, deploy technology to make ourselves more effective and more efficient? Moving on to our third aspect of our design, this is really looking at engaging at the systems level. We as in universities, are systems that are embedded within other systems. And so when we think about bringing students into the university system, we really have to ask ourselves the question, how prepared are these students when they come into the university? How equipped are they to take advantage of all of the tools and technologies and new ways of learning that we are able to offer? And if students are underprepared, whose problem is that to solve? And so at ASU, we have embraced that challenge and recognized that preparing children for lifelong learning is also part of our agenda, because we say that we take fundamental responsibility for the communities. And we've also come to understand that human beings don't stop learning when they get university degrees. People have the desire to learn throughout their lives. And why should the assets of an institution not be deployed to support a lifelong learner? So how do we answer these questions? We answer it by really integrating across the system. ASU runs what we call the ASU Prep Academies at 6 sites in the state. There are middle schools and there are high schools where these students are trained in a system that allows them to be successful. Students in high school can take ASU courses for free, and then they can transfer into ASU or really go anywhere else. We also have ASU Prep Digital, which is a digital high school that offers high school curriculum to schools across the United States and now globally as well. And in the digital prep environment, students can take college level courses from ASU. So it is about transcending the boundaries between high school and college and really serving the needs of those students who some may be on an accelerated path and some may have learning needs that are unique. But to take this one step even further, ASU launched the Learning Enterprise last year. And this is really to look at what is that lifelong learning infrastructure that we need to support students in the K through 12 environment, to create the bridges between schools and universities. And then looking forward from there, it's how do we upskill professionals and the workforce? And then what is it that we can do to create an environment for lifelong enrichment? How about that retiree who wants to take a music lesson or wants to study physics or whatever the case may be? So how do we create an environment that supports children in schools all the way to an adult who wants to learn at any point in their life? So this is really looking at the assets of the university and saying, what are all the innovative, creative ways we can serve population across this breadth? So that was about the systems level integrating, backward integrating into schools, and then forward integrating or thinking about platforms that will support people at any point in their lives. The fourth area that really influences our design is an aggressive focus on advancing interdisciplinary collaboration. We recognize that we have complex social problems to solve, and much of these, or many of these problems cannot be solved from a single discipline perspective. We want our faculty and our students to thrive in interdisciplinary environments. And so some of the questions that we continue to ask ourselves is, what is the university's role in solving critical social problems? How can we be contributing to problem solving, not just identifying and studying the problem, but how can we help with actual solutions? How can an interdisciplinary approach allow us to be more effective as we tackle these problems? And then how do we create structures and cultures that advance this interdisciplinary thinking and learning and research? So we take the question about structures and environments really seriously. We have almost 30 interdisciplinary schools where faculty members who are trained in specific disciplines have an opportunity to problem solve with others who may come from different disciplinary backgrounds. And this translates into our students having a richer learning experience. Outside of these schools, there are interdisciplinary initiatives and centers where research is conducted. And so there is an environment across the institution where these structures are already available for faculty and students to participate. One example of an interdisciplinary entity is our Biodesign Institute. We have over 150 researchers working on many aspects of health, sustainability, and security. And over the years, the Biodesign Institute has led to 860 inventions, over 200 patents, and 35 companies have spun out of the Biodesign Institute. And the opportunities that this kind of a configuration presents was something that we really understood during COVID. The Biodesign Institute jumped into action as soon as COVID hit, developed a saliva-based test that we deployed on campus and continue to have on campus, but then also worked with the city and the state in deploying some of these solutions. And so ASU was then able to also fulfill its mission of fundamentally serving society because we had this kind of a capacity on campus. Another example of interdisciplinary research and scaling impact is the Julianne Wrigley Global Futures Laboratory. We think of this as a medical school for the planet. This is a space where we have a College of Global Futures, the Global Institute of Sustainability and Innovation, a place where we can engage partners and networks outside of the institution, a place where faculty members from across the institution can participate. But this is really about how we can create a habitable planet and a future where there is well-being for all of us. And this question, or these questions that are being asked and answered in the lab are complex, they are large questions, but we recognize that unless you have this kind of a structure, we are never really going to be able to ask and answer these questions appropriately. So again, if we want to have impact at scale, we really need to rethink and redesign ourselves so that we can do work that can scale. And a quick note on then what we've been able to accomplish through this interdisciplinary orientation to research and that focus on having research of value, very significant growth in our research expenditures, which is really another metric that allows us to say that, yes, we are really focused on, as a public research university, focused on allowing our research to have impact. Design area number 5, it focuses on partnerships. And the questions that we ask ourselves here is, how can we build capacity for innovation rapidly? As you can see, we are a place where we have a lot of ideas, a lot of big ideas, but how do we innovate fast enough? And sometimes it's impossible to do that just as an institution by itself. How do we advance our capacity for innovation through partnerships? How can we create impact and create more access through partnerships? And so a couple of ways we answer this question is really to go out and aggressively seek partnerships. With over 500 corporate partners who engage the university at different levels, they are helping us accelerate our mission in many ways. A specific example I'd like to share with you is the Starbucks College Achievement Plan. This is a plan where baristas at Starbucks can get ASU degrees free of cost. There are over 200 degrees now that are available to Starbucks employees. I believe we have almost 4,000 graduates from this program and about 14,000 Starbucks employees currently enrolled in ASU online courses. So this is a good example of our access mission that is being scaled because of a partnership with an institution that is like-minded, that wants to help achieve the same impact that we are after. But it's not just corporate partnerships, it's looking at academic partnerships with global institutions. Again, as we think about solving problems at scale, we need to solve with a lot of other people, and then academic alliances both within the United States and globally as well. The final piece then of our design approach that serves our charter is to reconfigure resource acquisition. This is a particularly relevant issue for us as a public institution. Historically, we were funded by the state, and over the course of the years, that funding has reduced greatly, as it has happened in a lot of other places. And it's forced us to be really creative about how we think about resources. So how do we resource these big ideas that we have? How can we expand our resource base? And then how do we create structures and cultures that make resource acquisition a shared priority at the institution? It's not just a priority for the leader at the top, but something that all leaders can share. A couple of quick examples. So in 2006, we built our campus in downtown Phoenix with 7 colleges. And here we got funding support from the city of Phoenix. It was a significant effort from the city and the university to build this campus that has led now to an incredibly vibrant community. It has changed the face of downtown Phoenix. It has changed the economic structure of downtown Phoenix. ASU also has 6 innovation zones around our campuses. These are mixed-use facilities, so there are ASU facilities, there are classrooms, there are research facilities, but we also then invite our partners or potentially commercial interests to co-use these spaces with us, built to suit opportunities. And so that has led to some very significant economic outcomes for our local communities, and also really allowed us to fulfill our mission of integrating with our community in a significant way. The last thing I'll say around resource acquisition is around philanthropy. We have built ASU Foundation as a source of connecting with those who want to embrace our ideals and our values, and people who have the vision to solve problems at scale that we want to be able to solve. And so we have now named colleges, named schools, and other ways that our donors support our efforts. And we just finished a 10-year campaign last year. So really what this has been about is these examples that I've shared with you are ways that we have addressed growth and culture change, forcing us at every level to rethink what we know and what we take for granted, to challenge our own assumptions of what we can do and what we cannot do. And so who have we become in the process? We started with the what, the how, and the who. And I'm very proud to say that in the process, we have become an engine of social transformation and economic success. And as a result of these efforts, we are also #1 in the United States 6 years in a row. Like I said earlier, we are not giving up. We are relentlessly innovating our way into the future. So that's really what I wanted to share with you all. I look forward to the questions from Dr. Kim and also from the audience, and appreciate your time and your attention.
Thank you very much. What an impressive and inspiring and excellent presentation. Thank you so much. I think our Korean audience should be really, really inspired, by your presentation. And also, thank you very much for saving a little bit of time for our questions and, your answers. First of all, as a chairwoman, I have, many questions on my mind. Although I know this, case before, but you really vividly describe what happened during the last 19 years. And Minu, what do you think? Usually innovation, we talk about innovation a lot over the last years, and usually innovation is the topic of business sector, not university. However, your Arizona State University is not an Ivy League university, as far as I understand. This is public, state university. And why public universities like Arizona State University need innovation? Why is it so important, from your perspective?
So that's such an important and such a timely question, because I think higher education globally is at a moment where we recognize that we may be in a crisis, right? We need to all operate with a sense of urgency. So here are a couple of reasons why I think innovation is critical for higher education. As we look at some of the data and the projections for the global need and demand for higher education, we are at about 240 million right now. In 20 years, we are going to be at about 590 plus million. We do not have the capacity in the system globally right now to meet that demand. So what are we going to do about it? Are we going to just keep building new universities? Or are we going to think innovatively about scaling from where we have? We can by all means build more universities, but we can't build them fast enough to meet that demand. But even if we were to do that, there is also a sense of urgency that COVID has helped us see. That even in the universities that we have already, we were unprepared for this challenge of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. Over 150 countries shut down schools and universities because they could not teach in a pandemic. Mm-hmm. So I think that's another sense of urgency and a recognition that we are not equipped to meet the needs of our learners. And today it was a pandemic, tomorrow it could be something else. We can't just shut ourselves down because we were ill-prepared to serve society and to fulfill our mission. Then there is the other issue of how are we preparing our students for 21st century jobs and careers? So some statistics say that 65% of high school graduates today will have jobs that don't exist today. So what is the role of a higher education institution to prepare students for jobs and careers that even we can't really imagine, right? Mm-hmm. So we need to fundamentally rethink how we teach and how we learn. And it's not just then the students that we get, high school graduates, but it really is looking at lifelong learning needs of society. If not institutions of higher education, whose responsibility is it to really meet those needs, right? And then I think we look at all the social problems that we are dealing with, from environmental issues to climate change, to the fact that we need to feed very large billions of people on this planet. And then, you know, sort of social issues that are intrinsic to various societies. What role should we be playing as institutions that produce knowledge, right? Can the knowledge we produce be used to solve some of these problems meaningfully? So, you know, I could go on and on about that, the need for innovation and the need for change, but these are just some issues around capacity, around recognizing that our models are not robust. We are not built to sustain significant crises in society. And then also questioning our mission, right? Are we in fact serving the societies in which we exist if we are under-preparing students, if we are not equipping them for not just that first job, but for successful careers, then really what are we doing? So I think, you know, because I come from ASU, we operate from such a sense of urgency about solving these problems.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think you can go on and on and on, and truly, it is really convincing that, you know, our public institutions preparing our learners of the future, which is really, really unknown, and you truly believe that's the responsibility of public institutions. Great. Thank you so much. And then still, I'm thinking about, you know, while you're talking about the sixth element, which is too many and too broad and too deep. So I feel like we might need Jesus Christ, you know, to make this kind of change happen. And it is not really easy to change our universities, as you might already experienced. So in that case, we just changing one thing doesn't make our university innovate. We need at least, you know, sixth element and then plus alpha. And, you know, my question is then, where should we begin? It's too complex and, you know, too comprehensive, and then it's overwhelming. And where should we begin? What is your answer for that?
You know, that is a tough question, and I wouldn't suggest in any way that the ASU model is the only model to think about innovation. We are a very large institution, so some of the things that we get to do is also representative of our size and the focus on growth that we have. But I think, Dr. Kim, a good place to start for any institution is to say, what do we want to contribute to society, and how do we want to have impact? And those questions should be asked in some ways without paying attention to what exists now. Because you can't get innovative outcomes if you're going to focus on incrementally doing things better. But those questions about what should we be doing and how should we have impact should be more fundamental questions that put aside for the moment everything the university is to say, what could we do differently? And the answer may not be 6 design trajectories at the same time, but the answer may be, let's rethink how we teach and learn. If that is our primary mission as an institution, can we think about innovating in that space? Mm-hmm. The second piece to answering that question is, I don't think universities should be trying to answer this question by looking inside. I think we should answer this question by looking outside. Okay. We should engage with students. I think we should all be talking to students in high school and in schools to say, how do you like to learn? How do you learn? What makes for an engaging learning experience? We should talk to employers to say, what is it that they're looking for when they hire university graduates? We should talk to community organizations and leaders, social leaders, to say, where and how can universities engage and support? So I think we should ask ourselves fundamental questions about what we want to do and how we want to have impact. For a moment, pausing and disregarding everything that we have, but also not asking and answering that question ourselves. It's by really looking at that breadth of stakeholders we're trying to serve to allow ourselves to be informed by what they think is really important and how we might be able to contribute.
Amazing. I think, I didn't give you the questions before, but you are really, really well prepared. It means that you are really engaged in the process of your university transformation and innovation. That's great. And one of the tough questions in Korea is, sounds good, innovation and excellent plans and design. And you also are very lucky that you have a great leadership team. Your Michael, Crow, your president, who has been the president for 19 years, so long enough to create this kind of innovation. So we need great leaders. However, when those leaders' design and idea is transformed into classrooms, we need professors, like faculty members and staffs. And we have to make them engage in student learning, which is really, really tough. So in your case, were there any antagonistic attitude or resistance, from the faculty member or staff? How do you make them engage in this process?
I think there was considerable resistance when we began this journey. And I think we should expect resistance because these are structures and cultures that have been built over several hundred years that have not changed. So all of a sudden, when we say innovation and dramatic change, this is fairly new for people who are in universities. And I think if we're honest, we recognize that we are also part of the problem in that we train faculty to be disciplinary, to do certain things. And then when they get jobs in universities and they become faculty, we are shocked that they are not more open to change, right? Yeah. So in some ways, we are perpetuating the problem. But I think a way to get around this from our experience is to start with ambitious goals, to set goals that are so far out that we cannot reach those goals by doing the same thing over and over again. That we have to think differently. We have to try new things in order to get to those goals. So I think ambitious goals are really important. And what we have learned over the years is that ambitious goals brings out those people who are innovators. There are those people who are sort of waiting for an opportunity to try something new, and ambitious goals gives them the space to do that. But you just can't have ambitious goals alone. You need leadership support that comes with the ambitious goals, which might mean resources for people who are trying innovative things, spaces where they can innovate together. It might mean giving people extra training, investing in them. It might be changing some policies and procedures to allow people to engage differently. So that leadership support from the top of the institution, but then also looking at the unit level is really important. And then I'd say a good place to start is by creating small teams of people who are going to solve a specific problem and bringing together unusual people to solve a problem. So if you say, okay, we want to rethink teaching and learning and we want to say do adaptive learning, it's not picking the same faculty that you would have picked for anything else. It's saying, let's look at maybe some young faculty who are willing to experiment and try something new. Let's find some teaching associates who might be able to support. Let's bring some unusual people together. And I think when you bring unusual people together, they problem solve differently. And of course, all of this should come with a leadership support. But I would say that it has to start with ambitious goals. And it really goes back to your previous question about what should we be innovating. If it's innovation for the sake of innovation, it won't stick, it won't scale, people will give up, everybody will revert back to what they were already doing. But if the goal is ambitious enough and big enough and there is support, slowly the success will build on itself. Mm-hmm. There will be a lot of people who are skeptical, who will not participate, who may resist. But when they see the momentum that comes from success, it sort of motivates and draws more and more people in. And you don't really need everybody. You just need to get to that tipping point of enough of a majority that are really interested in doing and trying innovative things. And that's really all that you need. So it's just the key is to get to that right majority that it becomes a tipping point for innovation.
I see. So sounds like, at the beginning you also had resistance and maybe the kind of bad feelings. However, as you experience success, people gradually are immersed into the situation. Is it right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's creating those structures for people to think differently, right? To tell a faculty member, start doing interdisciplinary work, it's a hard thing, right? How do they interpret that question? But if you were to build a school that is interdisciplinary and you're hiring faculty into that interdisciplinary school, now the faculty member is sitting next door to somebody from a different discipline, right? They're doing things with somebody who is different from them. So that's really the university putting its resources and really building the designs around saying, how do we create spaces and structures that cause people to behave differently? Okay. And then incentivizing that and allowing for some early successes to create momentum.
Okay. And you talked about leadership support. And usually professors, they are trained as researchers, and then they don't have like a professional training to teach effectively. But like programs such as adaptive learning, they might need some professional like development, kind of things. And do you have that kind of support provided to your professors? They might be super busy, and do you think they have time, and do they have also those programs?
Yes, that's really where Ed Plus ASU's online platform has really made a difference, because they take the burden away from the professor to figure everything out. Ed Plus has instructional designers and other experts who work alongside faculty members. And we have found that faculty members initially were sort of anxious about what this was going to be like, but when you surround them with that kind of support, they get excited about trying new things. And so you have then faculty members who become the biggest champions for change. They are convincing their colleagues about the possibilities of new things. It's not so much the university administration. But you're absolutely right in recognizing that if we're asking people to do something completely different from what they do today, they need to have the resources and the support in order to be successful. Otherwise, it becomes too much of a burden.
Thank you. That just reminds me, people, resist because they don't know what's going to happen in the future, and they are afraid they might lose what they are used to be really comfortable. So, but in your case, you provide that kind of support, and maybe faculty members, they gradually are part of your innovation. That's amazing. And by the way, you talked about stakeholders. You involve your stakeholders, and do you sometimes include your student in those designing or implementing those innovations?
Yes, students have all kinds of opportunities. I can give you sort of a live example. We are in the middle of designing a new engineering school and redesigning 2 existing schools. We are involving faculty and staff at these schools and also students, and getting their inputs on what we could be rethinking as we think about educating them through these new schools. So that's just one example. We have a variety of approaches where students are in labs, in other kinds of initiatives where they are actually creating the solutions. And we are giving them the space for them to create the solutions, because there are many ways in which our students are smarter than us. And I think sometimes we have to give them the space and get out of the way and be willing to learn from them.
Okay, sounds like a happy family and a happy ending. However, there should be struggles and challenges during the process. Since you were the managing director of the institution, I think you should have faced many challenges. What was those challenges that you can think of one of the most challenging ones?
So my role is to focus on the University Design Institute, which is sort of one entity within ASU. But I've been at the institution for 18 years. And so some of the challenges early were, and some of the challenges we continue to face even today, is how fast can we grow? how big can we get with our initiatives?
I see.
Right? How do we balance the need for what we are doing today with the designs that we will need as we do things for tomorrow? So that is an ongoing tension that we all work with, is the accomplishments of today and the targets of today with our desire for growth. There were certainly resistance from faculty and staff early on because we didn't know where this was all going. The early years, there was a lot of feeling like experimenting, right? We're trying everything and it's all new. There's a lot of frustration that things are not working perfectly as we were getting off the ground. There was a lot of challenge from faculty around online education. People genuinely believed then, and I think many believe now, that online education is not comparable to on-ground education. So really working through mindset shifts, you cannot make these shifts happen overnight. It's allowing people to, really experience something, then they can start thinking differently. As they teach students online, they see the possibilities. So all of the traditional issues you would think with large-scale transformation we face, just like every other institution would face, I think the key is to be consistent. The key is to be ambitious, set a clear path, set a clear direction. For us, our charter provides that direction. Regardless of who we are at the institution, that is what guides our thinking. That's where we are going. So having that clear sense of vision and having that clear sense of purpose goes a really long way in inspiring and motivating people. But then there are the everyday aspects of managing and leading change. And it doesn't come just at the beginning. It is an ongoing, everyday challenge at the institution.
Okay, that's great. Personally, my university, like Chungang University, is one of the very much innovating university in Korea, and we also try to restructure those boundaries, like colleges and department. And then at the time, we also had a lot of conflict and many difficulties back several years ago. And in your case, you break the boundary between high school, university, and community university, and different colleges and departments. So it should be a very, very tough job. How did you do that? How did you do that at the beginning, and how did you manage? Were there any incentives or any ambitious goals that should be enough?
So I think the very first interdisciplinary school was a school of life sciences, where multiple disciplines came together to create the school. And President Crow led that process, and basically he did not dictate to the faculty what this school should look like. He allowed the faculty to create that configuration. Now, it didn't mean that everybody was happy. There were, some who left the university, others who, really didn't think it was going to work. But it was setting that ambitious goal and then giving the challenge to the faculty to come up with a configuration that could work for them. Since we have done that model, we have now come a long way. And in the last couple of years, what we have done is really be intentional about design and provide support to our units as we set up new schools and as we set up new units. So part of what my unit does within ASU is we work with deans and directors as they redesign their units. So we serve as the neutral, objective, process-oriented team, because we are not from the unit. We have no history with the unit. We have no agenda at the unit. But we are neutral process people who engage all faculty, all staff, and where appropriate, students in the design. So it's not design that is imposed by leadership at the top, but it is design that is built by the faculty and staff of the unit. Their voices and their ideas help shape what that unit is going to be. And for us, that has worked really, really well. That it's building from the ground up. Yes, the leadership at the top provides a vision, but it's everybody getting to be able to say, this is what my unit could look like. And we've had a lot of success really approaching it that way.
Yeah, now I begin to understand why Arizona State University became like #1 innovative university in the U.S. for the last 6 consecutive years. Amazing. Although I have still many questions, some our audience they have some questions. So let me give them a chance to ask you a question directly. They might ask a question in Korean, and then maybe can you see the interpretation, or I can interpret.
Yes, I think one of your colleagues was going to interpret.
Okay. All right. So then you can see the interpretation, or if it's not clear, then I can also interpret the question. First of all, out of our connector, Professor 이창규 교수님 질문해 주시면 감사하겠습니다. 네. So several people already gave questions, and then out of those question list, I'm going to select some of the questions might be relevant at this moment. 혹시 이찬규 교수님 접속하셨습니까?
네.
그러면 다음 질문하고 넘어가겠습니다. 두 번째로.
네, 질문해도 될까요?
네네. 질문 부탁드립니다. Now he's asking questions.
질문해도 될까요? 오늘 발표 아주 잘 들었습니다. 교수님께서 이런 그 분야에 관심을 가지고 참여를 하고 계시는지는 잘 모르겠지만 지금 애리조나 주립대학에서 인공지능을 활용해서 어댑티브 러닝을 시도하고 있다고 들었는데 사실 그 결과에 대해서는 아직 제가 확인을 못하고 있습니다. 혹시 이 어댑티브 러닝의 효과나 결과에 대해서 알고 계시면 말씀해 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
Okay. Minu, did you get the question? Did you get the question, Minu? He is curious about the impact of adaptive learning. He has heard about adaptive learning a lot, but so far he was not, confirmed about what is the impact of that, adaptive learning.
Professor Yu, that is a good question, and you are right in recognizing that I'm not the expert to speak to that. Currently, we use adaptive learning tools from a couple of different vendors. And so we have adaptive learning in biology, in math, in economics, history, and a couple of other subjects. And these are all vendor-based tools. I cannot speak to where we are going with artificial intelligence with adaptive learning, but if you would like more information, you're welcome to send me an email, and I will be happy to connect you with somebody at ASU who can answer that question for you directly.
Thank you. Okay, what an honor. Now you have a personal connection to Dr. Minu Aipe to send an email. And if she doesn't reply you, tell me. Because he's our vice president at Jungwon University. He used to be my boss. Thank you very much. It is just coincidence. Thank you. Let me go to the second question by Professor 박정욱 교수님 나와 계십니까? 안 나와 계세요? 네. 그러면 혹시 한승진 교수님 나와 계십니까? 한승진? 네. 질문 부탁드립니다.
네, 안녕하십니까. 저는 을지대학교의 한승진 교수라고 합니다. 우리 고모님 발표 잘 들었고요. 그래서 미국에서 6년 동안 혁신대학으로 선정된 인사이트를 저 개인적으로 상당히 흥미롭게 잘 봤습니다. 그래서 제가 좀 말씀드리고 싶은 게 두 가지가 있습니다. 아마 한국의 대학 같은 경우는 3,000명 이상인 대학이 약 한 13%밖에 안 되고요. 특히 1,000명 미만인 대학이 약 한 40% 가까이 됩니다. 그만큼 이제 규모 자체가 미국에 비해서 상당히 적은 것으로 되어 있기 때문에 아마 혁신이라는 게 미국과는 조금 다른 어려움이 있습니다. 따라서 우리 고모님께서 많은 연구와 또 실제 현장에 계셨기 때문에 이렇게 좀 작은 대학에서 혁신을 단기간에 이룰 수 있는 그런 케이스가 있다면 한 개 정도 말씀 부탁드리고요. 또 한 가지는 대학의 규모가 작다 보니까 한국에 있는 대학은 대학 특성화별로 대학을 운영하는 경우가 많습니다. 저희 대학 같은 경우는 이제 보건과 의료 분야의 특성화 대학인데 이렇듯 그 대학의 특성화를 활용해서 그 혁신을 이룰 수 있는 방안이나 혹시 그런 케이스가 있으면 답변 부탁드리겠습니다.
Okay, Minu, did you get the question in English? Or do you want me to interpret the question?
No, I got that question, Dr. Kim.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
Your interpreter was very helpful. Professor Han, thank you for that question. I don't think innovation should in any way be hampered by the fact that universities are small or that you're serving a smaller population. I think an interesting way to think about this is Korea has such an internationally recognized system of K through 12 education. I think that if there was a way that Korean universities could open themselves up to students from within the region, that could be an incredible opportunity because you really have such an incredibly strong system of education to begin with. So I think small number of students should really not be a barrier for access. I recognize that language can be an issue there, but it could be a potential opportunity for those Korean universities that want to open their doors to the region. Now, even with the smaller number of students, I think you all have the opportunity then to take the lead on innovating within the classroom and around the classroom, right? How can you rethink teaching and learning? And the fact that you have a smaller set of students should theoretically make it easier for you to experiment with new ideas. So 3,000 students is one thing, our 120,000 students is a completely different kind of number. But your smaller volume could really give you the opportunity to run more experiments on finding new ways to teach and learn and really engage your local community. And then if you are a specialist university in health and policy, how might you potentially collaborate with business organizations or policy organizations or the government to really influence change in society? How might you collaborate with universities that have complementary strengths? Could there be a consortium of universities that are looking at health and policy? Your university may approach it from one perspective, somebody else may have a medical school, and they may be able to build different strengths. So how might you take the theme of health and policy and really create networks and partnerships with other universities and with non-university entities so that your work has greater impact? So I think the opportunities are there. I think it's just a matter of dedicated leaders like yourself asking the big questions and then willing to experiment your way into finding the right answers.
Okay, thank you. Minu, you are a super positive person. Everything could become an opportunity for you. But Professor Han, so you understand that small scale is not on kind of a weak point. That's also your strength. You can utilize experiment many other experiment. Plus, your special area, health and medicine, has a great potential to contribute to the society, which Minu already mentioned that transform the society through university. Thank you very much. I hope you got the enough answer. Okay, you don't look so satisfied, but let me move to the third question. We have participant 이혜진 선생님 계십니까? 이혜진? Okay, there. 자, 질문해 주세요.
안녕하세요. 저는 포항공과대학교 혁신사업단 이혜진이라고 합니다. 제 말 잘 들리시나요?
네.
일단 제가 이제 사전에 드린 질문하고는 조금 다른 질문인데요. 강의 내용을 들으면서 이제 혁신과 관련해서 이제 저항이 많이 생기셨다고 그때 들었습니다. 그래서 보통 기본적으로 혁신에는 저항이 많이 생기는 게 너무나 당연하고 이를 극복하기 위해서 이제 제도라든지 정책이라든지 거버넌스들을 이제 변경하게 되는데 이런 경우에 이제 저항들을 겪으면서 아까 전에 말씀하셨던 소규모 TF 그룹이라든지 이런 걸로 돌파를 하셨다고 하셨잖아요. 그러면 어느 지점에 이르렀을 때 이제 저항보다는 혁신이 차지하는 부분이 커졌구나라고 느끼셨는지 그런 부분에 대해서 궁금합니다.
Okay. Minu, did you get the question? Do you remember the point?
Ms. Jin, that is a very interesting question. I don't know if we can point to a specific time or place in our trajectory where innovation overcame resistance. I think it was so organic in some ways that, you know, every unit moved at a different speed. Some colleges embraced innovation and doing interesting things earlier than other colleges. I think from a leadership standpoint, or from the standpoint of somebody like you that is driving innovation, is looking to see where you have the potential for the greatest success when you launch new ideas. Where can you find the people with the greatest appetite for doing something new? Because if you're going to start with everybody, it's going to be a harder a journey forward. It's going to be pushing a boulder uphill. But where can you launch experiments with people who have the appetite and the energy and the desire to do something new? And once you can get a few of those going, the success that those projects will bring, the resources that those projects will bring, the excitement that those projects will bring, will invite a whole bunch of other people to join in. So I wish I could say that there was a formula for converting resistance around innovation and change. There isn't. But I think our way is to launch many experiments, but find people who have the appetite to do it, not try to push every boulder uphill. And once you have enough momentum, then you bring more people on. But it's also, I think, as I said earlier, finding unusual suspects. You know, finding staff members from the institution who can participate in some of these things. Staff members bring a whole bunch of skill sets that faculty don't have. How can they be paired with the right kind of faculty initiatives? How can you bring people from outside who don't have the constraints of being in a university? They think differently. How can you add people from the community or business organizations to your innovation teams? Sometimes you just need the extra push of energy and new thinking and a different mindset to get your own people to change and do things differently. So I'd say put energy into launching experiments with the people who you think have the highest chance of success. And then I think once you sort of have that momentum going, then a lot of things become easier.
Mm-hmm. Okay, the reason why this question is asked to you is the situation is a little bit different because your initiative come from the bottom up. Your university take the lead. However, in case of Korea, university innovation is a national project. So government give fund to the university and then they are evaluated. So within the framework, we needed to innovate. So what is your then response? Do you still give the same comment?
You know, Dr. Kim, I don't think there is another way for universities to fundamentally change without tapping into the faculty and the staff who make the universities, right? Because otherwise you may be able to do some things and some things really, really well, but you're not going to get to transformational change unless you can tap into the vast majority of the faculty and the staff. And I think that sometimes we sort of look at the resistance and see that as a barrier. I think the resistance, as you had mentioned earlier, is often a function of fear, often a function of not sure where this is all going. But if we can tap into the energy of faculty and staff, and I'm sure that there are in every Korean university the same number of people who really care about students, faculty and staff, who really care about research, who really care about having impact. Those human instincts are the same everywhere. If there is a way we can tap into those instincts to start creating that culture change up bottom up as well, I think that would then meet the top-down government mandated approach to innovation. It's great that you have that kind of support from the government, but without sort of that culture change, without that mindset shift within universities, you're really not going to have the transformation that I think we all agree higher education really needs.
Okay, so don't blaming the government if they give extra support. Within that framework, we need to take the lead, how to utilize the resources and an opportunity. Thank you very much. And also we have an audience out there and then they're watching our forum through YouTube broadcasting. And I also have questions. Oh, you are so popular in Korea, and they have so many questions. And then let me choose maybe one or two questions out of the question list. The first one is about the money. Although you talked about those, resource acquisition, and this person is really curious about where did you get the money? Although you talked about those philanthropic things, however, they might not be enough because the state university in the U.S. you are lacking money, and then also the government support is shrinking. So how do you manage those resources? Would you like to clarify a little more detail?
Sure. I think it is, first of all, recognizing that you cannot rely on government funding as really the primary source. For us, that was a reality that we had to accept. So once you accept that reality, then you start looking around to say, okay, where else can we acquire resources from? So some of the things I shared with you included partnering with the government and developing a whole new campus in downtown Phoenix. Philanthropy is a major piece. We have a real estate strategy. We allow for the land that belongs to the university to be really creative about how we use it, building those innovation zones where we attract companies, where we attract commercial interests to come and use the space that we have. Lease spaces in our buildings or set up buildings. And so there's a real estate piece to this. And then there is the corporate partnerships that I think are really, really critical to moving forward, because a lot of organizations, business organizations have resources and they are trying to solve problems. Some of it is just selfish problems of they want really highly educated students who would become their employees. When we can connect with business organizations with the right kind of solution and a partnering situation, they are willing to contribute. There are corporate social responsibility buckets of money that business organizations may have that could legitimately be part of what we are doing. And then a major piece of our research is funded by the federal government. So National Science Foundation, the National Institute of Health, the Department of Defense, these are very significant funders for research. Philanthropy also really helps fund very large-scale research. So the key is to be as creative as we possibly can to say what are all the ways that we can acquire resources in ways to advance our effort. And I think this would be a good habit for public institutions to develop across the planet, because we don't want to be relying only on one source of funding. That's a really high-risk model. And I think as soon as we shift that mindset from, yes, the government should support everything we do, to we have to be innovative, we find all kinds of resources and all kinds of partners that not just bring in the resources, but make us better in the process, make us think differently, make us function differently, our processes become more efficient, we become more nimble and agile. So to me, resources is one great benefit, but I think partners and funders from outside also cause us to reinvent and redesign our own models. So net, I think it's really positive.
Okay, so what you mean is there are money out there, plenty of money available, but as a knowledge institution, you come up with a solution and they are willing to collaborate and provide money. And that's also helpful to you. That's great. Thank you very much. The second question is about the participant is from the local university. And nowadays, because of our low birth rate, some university in the down there, very difficult to collect or enroll students. So how can it change? Maybe you have a system like your freshman, what is the academy? And then you give an online program to the first year, and then that help you to attract students from the other regions. So what is your advice to our Korean universities struggling with the shrinking student enrollment?
I recognize and respect the challenge you have with the way your population is. I would say that the key is to not think of the potential pool of students as just being from the physical area where the university is located. Can universities be creative about attracting students from other parts of Korea? And that sort of implies that not everybody needs to come physically to the university. Can you embrace online education? If the university specializes in something, can you attract students from across the country to take courses at your university? So that's one way of breaking out of that mindset of saying the only students I can have are the students who are in physical proximity to me. I think there are also ways for universities to backward integrate and support schools. So you already have a fantastic school system in Korea. And so you may not necessarily be trying to address gaps, but can universities backward integrate to help some students accelerate as they advance through school? Some students may be ready to take college level classes when they are in school. So can the university support high schools by offering these opportunities for students to take college credits, run summer internships or summer camps, bring students from high school into the campus and integrate them into the university experience? So that could be another way to do it. And then if language were not a barrier, I would think that Korean universities have an incredible opportunity to attract students from the region and potentially even beyond, right? As a country, you are known for being technologically advanced. You're known for having a really robust school education system. So if you are able to put out knowledge products and offerings that are more accessible to students from the region, that should be an incredible opportunity. So one of the things we have learned with our digital high school that is now in demand in a lot of places outside of the United States is that there is a need. There are a lot of places on the planet where the education system and the infrastructure is so weak that those countries or those regions are not going to be able to make it up on their own. They need support, but they don't just need somebody giving them money. They need support with somebody coming to them with the infrastructure and the tools. So I think that could be another wonderful opportunity for Korean universities to expand the kind of impact that you have, look beyond, first of all, look within society in innovative new ways, but certainly look beyond the country and the boundaries of the country to say, how might you scale impact more broadly?
Thank you. I think we need to bring your president to our Korean university to help our faculty members, because your last answer is connected to the question I chose last, because the participant is really curious about. It is really difficult to make faculty members participate if they are tenured and nothing can change them or nothing can move them. So maybe since you're working internationally and you have seen many different types of universities, so in case of Korea, how do you think we can motivate them to participate in this process?
Some of it is, I think, choosing the projects well, looking to see where there is momentum. Right? If you know that a particular, say, disciplinary faculty is less likely to participate, maybe that's not maybe where you want to start, but start in a different place. Maybe it's a different discipline, maybe it's a different configuration of faculty, maybe it's a mix of tenured and non-tenured faculty members, maybe it's some younger faculty members who already have embraced new ways of thinking and learning because of who they are and how they've been prepared. So it's really looking to find those little pockets where you have people who want to do things differently. And I'm completely convinced that everywhere in the world, there are faculty members and staff members in universities who want to do things differently, but do not have the opportunity because they're constrained by policy, they're constrained by structure, they're constrained by the lack of incentives. And so it's sort of finding a way to construct experiments to find those individuals who you think are most likely to take on a challenging problem. Create the support for them to be successful, allow them to do something interesting, and then build from there. I hate to use the virus model because of what the pandemic has done to the planet, but it is really that kind of infection of innovation, infection of a new mindset that we need. And it has to begin somewhere. It can't be everybody at the same time. Can small pockets of forward-thinking individuals take on interesting projects, support it, show success, then they infect the next group, and so on and so forth. So I'm completely convinced that human beings are capable of innovation. That's how we've gotten to this place in human history, right? We are fundamentally wired to solve problems. So if our institution and our structures and our policies gave us the space to problem solve and to think differently, we all have people who can do that. So I remain completely optimistic about the capacity of universities to innovate. We just need to move with a sense of urgency and a vision for what we could possibly be.
Amazing. Your last word really strikes me. Human beings are capable of innovation. I think that's your true kind of, face that you have, while you are going through this journey. Although still we have so many questions, myself and then our kind of Zoom participant, and also those people who are watching, this forum using YouTube. I think my time has up, so I have to finish this question and answer session. Minu, thank you so much. You truly make me believe, why Arizona State University become the #1 innovative university during the last 6 consecutive years. Thank you so much. Let me finish, over here. Thank you.
Okay, as Dr. Kim said, it's about time to wrap this session up. But before we let you go, Dr. Ive, first of all, I and we would like to express our deepest gratitude for your meaningful presentation and precious time. Thank you for that. And you indeed revealed the secret of ASU, as Dr. Kim said before. So, for the last minute, we would like to hear from you how the time was. How was it for you, this session?
It was such a pleasure and a privilege to be here. I'm so delighted to have had this opportunity to engage in a conversation. Dr. Kim, thank you for facilitating a really wonderful conversation. Great questions. I sense that there is a shared energy towards change. I know Korean universities are already doing amazing things. So nobody is starting from ground zero. Everybody has made progress and moved in so many different ways. That's already very inspiring. I just want to wish everybody in the audience the very best as you lead innovation and change and transformation in your own institutions. I don't think any individual university can do this alone. I think we are all in this together as higher education transforms, and collectively we can make an impact on society, both social transformation and economic success. So I wish everybody well, and thank you again for the opportunity to be here and connect with you.
Thank you. It was our great honor to have you as a speaker. And for Professor Kim, we also want to hear from you. We truly appreciate your contribution as a great moderator for this session. For you, how was it?
I think I already worked very hard. However, if you ask me to give a word, it was a really meaningful time. Like, as a professor and also working for innovation in my own university, sometimes I complain. Government, somebody else, because of them, the structure, where, those, a lot of hurdles, we cannot do this. That was actually in the little part of my brain, I had thought about that. But today, thanks to you, I really found out that it doesn't matter. Human beings are really capable of innovation regardless what kind of struggles or other hurdles are there. So being a presider of this session, I think the benefit is mine. I am also energized and I am refreshed. And I think this University Innovation Forum is quite helpful for the audience out there, how we proceed this long journey into our university change. I really appreciate